Hello everyone and welcome back to Beatly Tones Beatles channel. Lovely to have you here. Thanks for joining me for this video and I hope you're all doing well. Now in today's video I'm going to be ranking the solo albums of this fella here, John Lennon, Johnny Rhythm. And I know what you're thinking, oh no, I've seen a million squillion boring old YouTubers boring me stupid with John Lennon ranking videos, and of course you'd be absolutely right. But I haven't done a John Lennon solo album ranking video on this channel yet, and for this channel to be considered a proper Beatles YouTube channel, a legitimate Beatles YouTube channel, which I hope it is, I must do a John Lennon solo ranking video. It is the law. So I hope you'll indulge one more boring old YouTuber to bore you stupid with another John Lennon ranking video. You never know, it might throw up a few surprises. I guess that depends on how you personally rank these albums. Now, before I get into the video proper, just wanted to say a big warm welcome to all the new subscribers to the channel. Been quite a few of you lately. Thank you so much for subscribing. Really appreciate you being here, and I hope you enjoy the content on the channel and get involved with some of the videos. Okay, so before we start the actual ranking, just a couple of tiny little rules. So in this ranking video, I'm not gonna include any of that unfinished music nonsense, and I'm not going to include the wedding album either. There is absolutely no point. You cannot compare avant-garde music with proper, genuine pop, rock, whatever you want to call it, albums. There is no point. We know that those three albums are going to come right at the bottom of this list, and it makes no difference if Life with the Lions comes bottom or second from bottom or third from bottom. All three of those albums we know are virtually unlistenable, so they are not included. Also not included is live albums, so no live piece in Toronto, no live in New York City, and of course there'll be no compilation albums included either. Now what I will be doing in this video is naming my favourite track on each album and shaming my least favourite track on each album. But when we take all those albums out of the mix, we are sadly left with just 8 genuine John Lennon pop and rock albums, which is, you know, a sad total for such an important and fantastic songwriter and musician. And we can only wonder really how many more albums would have been in this ranking video had it not happened. But it is what it is, and we are left with 8 superb John Lennon albums to cherish and rank in this video. So let's get on with it. So as I said, 8 songs to rank, and something's got to come right at the bottom of the pile. For me, it is this album from 1972, Sometime in New York City. Now, does that mean that this album is complete garbage? No, not really. This is John's weakest album as far as I'm concerned, but it is one of the most interesting albums of John's career, and I could find more things to say about this album than I probably could about almost any of the others in his catalogue. The album, it plays out like a diary or a newspaper where John is reacting angrily to things that happen in the news. But like a newspaper, the stories become outdated very quickly indeed. And because he is writing on the spur of the moment as things happen, he's not always thinking it through. He's not always looking at the longer picture, and some of it becomes a little bit embarrassing for him. But there are moments on this album, and Woman is the Figure of the World is one of them. Obviously it's a controversial song because of that word, but he's not using it in a racist way. We get to learn that that word, the origins of that word, refers to anyone who is oppressed. And in this song, we are talking about the oppression of women, which is an important subject that he is bringing out into the open. And, important it is as for John as a new-found feminist, and it is a good song. Sisters, Oh Sisters, a Yoko song, a little bit of light reggae. It's a song that I enjoy quite a lot. Nice song. Angela, about activist Angela Davis, is a beautiful song. Really great song, sung really well by both John and Yoko. We're All Water, the final track, is a kind of a Yoko freak out with really good lyrics, good fun lyrics as well. Then there's two songs here which I think are misguided. John has lost his way with these songs. Luck of the Irish and Sunday Bloody Sunday, where John appears to be siding with the IRA, which is obviously in bad taste. And Luck of the Irish is quite a pretty song, but it is ruined by terrible angry lyrics. And Sunday Bloody Sunday is just a terrible song with terrible lyrics. The chorus is horrible. It's really horrible. And it even fades out and then comes back in again with that horrible chorus. It's probably the worst song on the album for me. New York City, the title track, is an absolute belter. One of John's best rockers with great lyrics, great fun lyrics. John Sinclair moaning about the left-wing activist John Sinclair, who was busted and given 10 years in prison for owning 2 joints, is a great song musically. Some great slide guitar on that song, but the 15 got to set him free is really bloody annoying, isn't it? Attica State, song about the prison riots at Attica State, again, poorly chosen as a subject matter, I think, and quite ironic. He's also talking about the conditions for prisoners in jail, and Attica State being the prison that Chapman spent about the first 13 years or something like that of his sentencing. So let's hope that they didn't improve the conditions too much before he got there. The song Born in a Prison is quite a pretty song as well, but again, terrible lyrics. I just picked out this lyric. We live with no reason, kicked around for no reason, thrown out without reason like tools. This is a song written by Yoko, and like tools was the best thing that she could think of as something that gets thrown out. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, this, of course, is a double album. It comes with a live jam album taken from the Lyceum gig in London 1969 and the Fillmore East gig with Frank Zappa and the Mothers in 1971, but nothing in that jam album improves the album at all. So this is the weakest link in the John Lennon canon as far as I'm concerned, but that doesn't mean that I don't want an Ultimate Mixes box set for this, because I do. As I say, I do find it interesting, and I do really want to hear all the outtakes and the evolution mixes of this. And I hope they're not going to just skip over it, because there's few enough John Lennon albums as it is, 8, as we've discussed. We can't really afford to lose one of them. So I hope we do get that and they don't cop out on that. So Sometime in New York City, it's number 8. My favourite track on the album is New York City. My least favourite track is Sunday Bloody Sunday. So number 7 on my ranking is this album from 1975 rock and roll. Really love this album. The reason why it's ranked so lowly on my chart is because it's an album of covers, and I'd rather hear songs written by John Lennon rather than a bunch of covers, unless that song written by John Lennon is Sunday Bloody Sunday, of course, in which case I'd much rather hear the covers. Now, Ringo did 2 cover albums. Paul has done 3, but in my opinion, Rock and Roll is the best covers album by any of the solo Beatles by quite some distance. John's vocals throughout this album are absolutely superb. We all know the kind of hassle that John went through to get this album out, the recording of it in LA with Phil Spector, where everyone was off their face and out of tune. And then Phil Spector ran off with the tapes. He couldn't get them for a year. Then he had to start again in New York. And the fact that he managed to come up with an album this good out of that mess is something, is an achievement in itself. Now, I really like these cover versions, even though I'm not really a fan of 1950s rock and roll. But what I like about this album is on a lot of the songs, John tries to do something different with the arrangement, which I really like generally. Lots of high moments on this track. Slipping and Sliding, absolutely fantastic. Love Stand By Me and Bebop-A-Luna, the 2 medleys, Rip It Up, Ready Teddy, and Bring It On Home, Send Me Some Lovin'. I love that hiccupy vocal that he does in the middle of that. Bring It On Home to Me, Send Me Some Lovin'. Fantastic. Can't Catch Me is a really good song. I love Boney Maroney, and in the song Just Because, beautifully sung, beautifully arranged song. At the end, John does a little bit of chat, and it appears that he's saying goodbye to everyone or saying goodbye to his solo career. But all in all, I think this is a really great album. My favourite track on the album is Slipping and Sliding. My least favourite is Do You Want to Dance? I don't really think the arrangement of that particularly works well for that song. But number 7 is Rock and Roll. So number 6 in my ranking is Milk and Honey from 1984. Now, Milk and Honey, interesting album. Of course, this is the first batch of unreleased Lennon material that we got from the Lennon camp, the first in a long line of unreleased Lennon material. The problem with John's songs on this album is, of course, that they're not finished. They all come from the 1980 Double Fantasy sessions and of course, are not finished. Now, Yoko's songs, completely different kettle of fish. Yoko's songs, I don't think any of these were recorded during the 1980 sessions, which means that John doesn't play on them. They were recorded much later. In fact, Yoko put out 2 solo albums between Double Fantasy and Milk and Honey, so she spent a lot of time in the studio. She uses different musicians on her songs on this album than to the musicians that played on the Double Fantasy and album, and therefore are the ones that are on John's songs, which gives the album a kind of an odd feel, because an incohesive feel, if you like, because you've got sort of John's songs which are unfinished and a little bit rough, and Yoko's songs which are, fully polished and using different musicians. Now, I always think that Yoko's songs work better if they're either rock songs or a bit funky or a bit reggae or a bit dancey. I don't think ballads really work very well for her voice, and I like them much less than her sort of quirky, sort of funky, dancey songs. And her first 2 tracks, Sleepless Night and Don't Be Scared, kind of come into that bracket of being sort of a little bit reggae, a little bit funky, and I like them a lot. Oh Sanity, only a minute long, it's short, it's sharp, it's to the point, and I really like that abrupt ending. Your Hands on side 2 is a difficult listen. It's definitely a difficult sing-along track because of the Japanese language lyrics, but it is sort of a hard rock song, and it's very different from anything we've had on a Lennon album before, so it's original from that point of view. Let Me Count the Ways is a cassette demo. It's badly recorded. It doesn't sound great. It's a ballad. I don't really like it. And You're the One is a great ender for this album. It's quite funky, but generally I don't think that Yoko's songs on this album are as strong as her songs, particularly on side one of Double Fantasy. And I think it was a real misstep for this album to leave off Yoko's brilliant Walking on Thin Ice, which is her best track of all time, in my opinion, her real sort of tour de force, if you like. Mistake to leave that off. I think if it had been on here, it would have been a better album. Now on to John's songs. On side one, we get I'm Stepping Out, I Don't Want to Face It, and Nobody Told Me. All upbeat rockers, witty lyrics in places. They are all really great songs and could have been so much better had they been finished. Borrowed Time on side two, opener of side two, a sort of a reggae influenced song. Again, it's a little bit underdeveloped, but again, you kind of feel that it's got the potential to be a really good song, unlike Forgive Me, My Little Flower Princess, which is really underdeveloped and goes nowhere whatsoever for me. A lot more work would have been needed on that to bring that up to scratch. Now, John's cassette demo, Grow Old With Me, right from the very first time I heard this album, I thought that if that song had had the chance to have been recorded in the studio with the proper musicians, maybe throw some strings at it, it could have been an all-time Lennon classic, but sadly it never got finished. So those are kind of my thoughts on Milk and Honey. Now, I've ranked this at number 6, but I often wonder if those John songs had had the chance to have been finished properly, where would this album rank in my chart if they were all finished and polished and, up to standard? An interesting thought. I'd love to know your thoughts on that. What do you think? Where would the finished versions of those songs, and you've got to use your imagination a little bit because it's a subjective question, but do you think it would rank quite high in your list? Let me know down in the comments. But my favourite track on this album is I Don't Want to Face It. My least favourite is Let Me Count the Ways. Milk and Honey is my number 6. So into the top 5, and my number 5 is Mind Games from 1973. Now, I think Mind Games is an album that kind of slips under the radar a little bit. I think people forget how many good songs there are on the Mind Games album. And it's true, I think, that John is maybe like treading water a little bit on this album. There's nothing new or innovative about this album, but it has got a lot of strong songs on it with strong melodies. Now the album kicks off with the title track Mind Games, which was the hit single, and I think that as itself as a single kind of goes under the radar a little bit. I think people forget about Mind Games as being a great single, compared with Imagine or Number 9 Dream or something like that. But Mind Games, a song that I really like. Tight As is the next track, and it's a tight little rocker, nice little guitar breaks in it as well. But I think the Mind Games album as a whole, the big winners on the albums are the ballads, and the first of those is track 3 on side 1. I See My Sen, I think, is a really pretty song, a heartfelt song with a fantastic guitar solo in the middle, I think played by Dave Spinoza. Really great. But then the album takes a little bit of a dip. One Day at a Time is the opening lyrics to that song is You Are My Weakness, and that lyric could almost be pointed directly at the song itself because it is a real weakness on this album. I don't really like the female backing vocals on this. They're by a group called Something Different, whoever they are. I don't know who is in the group Something Different. It sounds like a couple of female singers, but I think they're too up front in the mix. I just don't like it. It's just a little bit too saccharini for me. The next track, Bring On the Lucy, Free the People, is kind of harking back to sometime in New York City with a bit of sloganeering. It's a kind of a political song, but it's much more melodic than anything on Sometime in New York City, and with better lyrics as well. The final track on side one is something called Newtopian International Anthem, which is 3 minutes of silence, which I kind of get it. You know, he's creating this imaginary peaceful land where the national anthem is like nothing jingoistic whatsoever, but he'd kind of done this silent track already on Life with the Lions with 2 minutes silence. So, you know, he's not sort of pulling up any trees by putting on a silent track. It's not big and it's not clever. Side two opens up with Intuition, a fantastic song, really like it, nice and upbeat, and that is followed by Out the Blue, which is an outstanding ballad, really great, heartfelt song again, gentle ballad with a big chorus. Really like that song. Only People is a little bit lightweight. That's the next track, but it's not unpleasant. It's quite an enjoyable track. The next track after that, I Know, is another outstanding Lennon ballad. Really love that song. Great lyrics and a superb vocal. The penultimate track, You Are Here, is kind of borderline country. It's a ballad, it's gentle, but it's got that country twang. Unusual for John Lennon to do a country song, but it works for him here. I do really like that song. It is a country song. But the final track, Meat City, is an out and out rocker. Some great guitar licks in it, and I really like that song as well. So there's a lot to enjoy on Mind Games when you think about it as being the follow-up of Sometime in New York City. It's a great big leap back into the mainstream for John Lennon on this album, and I like it a lot. I think my favourite track on it is Out the Blue. It's a toss-up between that and I Know, but I'll go for Out the Blue. The weakest track, I think, is One Day at a Time. So my number 5 is Mind Games from 1973. So at number 4, I'm going for Double Fantasy from 1980, an album that's very close to my heart, and I'm sure we all have an emotional attachment to this album. But for someone who discovered the Beatles in 1976, John Lennon had already retired from the music business by the time I even knew he existed. So when we heard in the summer of 1980 that John was back in the studio and making a new album, that was like the most exciting news that I'd ever heard. When the lead-off single, Just Like Starting Over, came out, I bought it, I played it to death while I waited patiently for the album to come out. And when the album did come out, it became the first John Lennon album that I was able to buy on release date, because all the others I'd had to buy retrospectively. So that's another reason why it's special to me. But when I got the album and realised that there were 7 songs from Yoko and 7 songs from John on the album, I was a little bit disappointed. And by the way, 14 tracks on an album in 1980 was a good return. But 7 new John Lennon songs, just 7 new John Lennon songs, I felt was a poor return for my patience. I'd waited 4 years for a new John album to come out, and now it has. I was only going to be getting 7 John Lennon songs. But once I played the album a few times, it became very apparent that Yoko had been much more aware of the current music scene, which was something that I dug at the time. She was more aware. Her songs were sort of punky and new wavy and quirky and angry and in that sort of vein, whereas John's were far more sort of mainstream, I think. And by that, I kind of mean, you know, the sort of artists that were around at that time, maybe Susie Sue out of Susie and the Banshees, Lena Lovitch, the girls out of the B-52s. Were they was Yoko influenced by them, or were they influenced by Yoko? Because remember, Yoko was doing this stuff, 10 years ago. So, it might be quite fair to say that Yoko was the original punk rocker. But if we look at her songs, Kiss 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 is angry, and it's an uncomfortable listen. And when I say uncomfortable, I'm talking about that fake, well, I think it's fake, that fake orgasm at the end of the song. It's uncomfortable to listen to, but challenging at the same time. Give Me Something and I'm Moving On, both angry and gritty songs, and I love them. I love all three songs on side one from Yoko. Side two, less so. I'm Your Angel, I never really took to at all, and I can remember my dad, who used to, hear the music from this album emanating from my bedroom at great volume. I can remember him saying, that song, that's not their song. It's a song called Making Whoopee, which was a song I'd never heard of at that time. But if you do go and check out the song Making Whoopee, they are very similar. He was right about that. Beautiful Boys, again, was a song that I never really took to. I felt that the lyrics were a little bit contrived, but though both of those songs are songs that I've kind of mellowed to as I've got older. Every Man Who Has a Woman Who Loves Him, a great song, and this kind of harks back to what I was saying earlier in the video, that when the song's like a little bit funky and a little bit quirky, this is what Yoko does best, and this is a great song with John's backing vocals very high in the mix, prominently. You can hear him. Her final song on the album, Hard Times Are Over, is a song with an optimistic theme that became very poignant, bearing in mind what happened, after this album came out. But it is an optimistic way and a positive way to end the album. But it was a song I never really took to at the time. I always thought that she was singing Hot Dogs Are Over. And if you're a fan of this song, and I've just ruined it for you because you now won't be able to unhear Hot Dogs Are Over when you listen to it in future, I apologise for that in advance. Now, John's songs, different kettle of fish altogether, just like Starting Over. It's very Beatley, it's very poppy. It's a song, just like Starting Over is referring to the rebirth of John and Yoko's relationship, but it could just as easily be referring to the rebirth of John's solo career. Clean Up Time, I felt that he was treading water on that song. Nothing new there. I felt that this song could fit perfectly on Walls and Bridges from 6 years earlier, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just sort of pointing out that I didn't think he'd moved on at all from that. It is a good song nonetheless. Now, I'm Losing You and Watching the Wheels, they are two songs that I think are as good as any songs in John Lennon's back catalogue. Absolutely superb. I'm Losing You with that sort of cutting guitar riff, great lyrics as well. And also, I love the bit during Earl Slick's guitar solo in that song, you can hear John whooping and generally being delighted with being back in the studio in the background while Earl Slick is going through that solo. Watching the Wheels, a song about people asking him, what you doing, man? You're staying at home baking bread and being a house husband and looking after the baby when you should be out there making records. And John's just saying, well, I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round, and very happy with his lot. He is. Beautiful Boy, a song about Sean, again, poignant in, with when you bear in mind what happened afterwards. But it contains that killer lyric, life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans, and so right he was about that. Dear Yoko is a song that I'm not sure whether it's a poor man's Oh Yoko from the Imagine album or the other way round. I think it's an okay song. It doesn't break any new ground for me, but it's still a good song. And Woman, obviously the most commercial sounding song on the album. He sounds just like Beatle John on that track. And what could be better than that? And I think generally Double Fantasy is a much better album than fans give it credit for it. It's a good, solid album with lots of really good tracks on it. Now, because of what happened, at the time, Just Like Starting Over was slipping down the charts when John was killed. Obviously, it went up to number one. The album got to number one as well. I tried to buy my girlfriend at the time this album, and you couldn't find a Double Fantasy in the shops anywhere. It was sold out everywhere. Crazy stuff. He'd never had a number one single in the UK before he died. Now he had two. Well, actually, he had three, because Just Like Starting Over, Imagine and Woman all went to number one, and he would have been delighted about that if he had been around to enjoy his newfound success. So as I say, it is a great album. My favourite track on the album is I'm Losing You. My least favourite track on the album is I'm Your Angel, which seems to be called Yes, I'm Your Angel on albums that it's been released on since then. But that's Double Fantasy. It's a great album, isn't it? So into the top three. And I would pretty much expect that most people ranking John Lennon's solo albums would probably come up with the same three albums in the top three, but maybe not necessarily in the same order. My number three is Walls and Bridges from 1974, an utterly superb album. Now, I think that it's fair to say that John does his best writing in the face of adversity, and 1974 he's in LA, the Lost Weekend period, he's separated from Yoko, he's doing a shed load of drugs and drinking himself stupid, he produces an album of the utmost quality, and when he is faced with adversity, he always tends to lay himself bare as far as his lyrics goes, and that is definitely what happens on this album. And if it hadn't been for the slick production on this album, a lot of the songs on here would fit perfectly onto Plastic Ono Band, because that does the same thing. Now, the opening track, Going Down on Love, talks about John's current domestic plight away from Yoko. He says, somebody, please help me. Now, we've heard that lyric before, but then he goes on to say, I'm drowning in a sea of hatred, and that is very dark, as a lot of the lyrics on this album are. Next track up, Whatever Gets You Through Night, don't need to say too much about that. Really upbeat, superb single, got to number one in America, has got Elton John's Chubby Little Fingers all over it. Great song. Track three, Old Dirt Road, beautiful ballad written with Harry Nilsson, piano-led ballad, superb singing on this, and lyrics as well, absolutely love it. Now, the album takes a little bit of a dip on track four. What You've Got, again, is talking about Yoko. You don't know what you've got till you lose it. But the song doesn't really go anywhere, but it's quite funky, and it's not a bad song, but not up to the standard of the others on this album. On track five, Bless You, again, another beautiful, heartfelt ballad. He's pleading with Yoko, bless you wherever you are. And then he goes on to talk about whoever is with Yoko at the moment, which we think at this particular time was David Spinoza, the guitarist that played with John on Mind Games and with Paul on the Ram album, and also on Yoko's Feeling the Space album. But he sings, bless you whoever you are, holding her now, be warm and kind-hearted. A heartbreaking lyric, but beautiful all the same. A great song. Side one ends with the very dark Scared. Again, really dark lyrics on this one, but again, a superb song. I'm scared, develops into I'm scarred. Track one on side two, number 9, Dream. Don't need to talk about that too much. Everyone knows it's fantastic. It's a hit single and a really great atmospheric song. Surprise, surprise, Sweet Bird of Paradox is a song for May, and gives a little bit of light relief to this very sort of heavy subject matter that's going on throughout this album. Steel and Glass is a kind of How Do You Sleep Mark II. I think this time Alan Klein is the target, although later John said that the song was about him, but no one really believed that. We think it's about Klein, and it's even got the How Do You Sleep riff on the song as well, just to, you know, smash the ball into the back of the net in case you missed that it was a dig at someone. Beef Jerky is the penultimate proper track. It's an instrumental, doesn't really go anywhere, but it has got that little guitar riff, which is a little tribute to the guitar riff on Paul's Let Me Roll It, which in turn is a little tribute to the guitar riff on John's Cold Turkey. So we think it's John paying tribute to Paul, who's paying tribute to John, maybe. The final proper track is Nobody Loves You When You're Down and Out, and again a superb song, the first song that John wrote in LA, and kept it for about a year before actually recording it. But it is a superb song, and you know he comes up with lyrics, you know, I'll scratch your back and you knife mine, and everybody loves you when you're 6 feet in the ground, and ain't that the truth? The album closes with a little throwaway of John with Julian Lennon having about a minute of yah, but we won't bother talking about that. So Walls and Bridges is my number 3. My favourite track on the album is Nobody Loves You When You're Down and Out. My least favourite proper track is Beef Jerky. Fun fact about Walls and Bridges, this picture here drawn by John, age 11, of the 1952 FA Cup final between Newcastle and Arsenal. Now, folklore has got a funny way of moving facts from fiction to fact, and it's been well quoted down the years that ironically the Arsenal and Newcastle teams that played in this 1952 Cup final featured a player called Walls and a player called Bridges, which is an absolute lie. That's just not true at all, but it would have been a great story if it was true. But number 3, Walls and Bridges for me. So 2 albums left to rank, and my number 2 is Imagine from 1971. Now, I'm not going to talk too long about this album for 2 reasons. One, this video has gone on quite long enough, and also I've done a full deep dive review, track by track review of this album on the channel already, so you can have a look at that if you want to. But I will say that when I did that deep dive review, I ranked 5 of the 10 tracks from this album as 10 out of 10, those being Imagine, Jealous Guy, Oh My Love, How'd You Sleep, and How. So 5 out of the 10 tracks, 10 out of 10. That's why I rate this album so highly. I don't think I need to talk about any of those songs anymore, but Crippled Inside is pleasant enough, a good fun song. I think that the album dips a little bit with It's So Hard and I Don't Want to Be a Soldier. The second of those has never really resonated with me, although I did enjoy it a little bit more when we got the Ultimate Mixes set. Give Me Some Truth gave us a little bit of a taster of what we might be getting in some time in New York City when it first come out. And of course, Oyoko is a very, joyous track. How'd You Sleep? The grittiness, the nastiness in that song kind of overshadows the fact that it's a really, really good song. George Harrison playing on that one, a fantastic slide guitar solo. But my favourite track on the album is Oh My Love. My least favourite is I Don't Want to Be a Soldier. My number 2 is Imagine. So we've reached the number 1 spot, and it is of course John Lennon, Plastic Ono Band from 1970. Now, I'm not quite sure whether this album is the greatest Beatles solo album of all time. I think there's, a hair's breadth between this and All Things Must Pass, and either could be deemed as being the greatest on any particular day. Now, this album is John Lennon stripped naked again, but not literally this time. He bears his soul really throughout this album. A lot of this album came out of his his and Yoko's therapy sessions with Dr. Yanoff, and doing the Primal Scream stuff. 2 tracks for sure came out of that. That is the sort of the heartbreaking Mother, where he talks about his his unhappy childhood. It's called Mother, but he also talks about his father in that song as well. One of the reasons why this album is his best album is his singing throughout this album is just absolutely immaculate. I don't think I've ever heard John sing as well as he does on this album, not during the Beatles or any of his other solo albums. His singing on this album is absolutely first class. And towards the end of the song, he goes into these kind of primal scream shouts, but somehow still managed to sound completely passionate, completely out of control, yet completely in tune. Mother is a great way to kick off this album, but it is a harrowing listen. Hold On, the next track, is a little bit lighter. It's much more positive. It's looking to the future. It's a beautiful song. Again, his singing is just spot on. Really great lyrics on this as well. I Found Out, track 3, is another angry song, and he is really going for it in this song. And again, the singing is so passionate. It's just an absolute joy. Working Class Hero, just John and an acoustic guitar. Again, he's talking about his childhood, but the fact that it's just him and an acoustic guitar just makes it just so dramatic. The track that ends side 1, Isolation, is just the most beautiful song. Piano ballad with really gorgeous chord changes and just just fantastic vocals. Again, the middle eight, I don't expect you to understand. Just listen to his voice during that part of the song. Absolutely brilliant. Remember, that opens up side 2 is an upbeat piano, a kind of ballad, a kind of rocker, I'm not sure, but again, he's going back, he's talking about his childhood, and again, the middle eight in this song, the Don't You Worry About a Thing bit, his voice is so crystal clear, it's just unbelievable, fantastic. The next track is the beautiful ballad Love, where it's got that unusual slow piano fade in, just gorgeous song. Well is another sort of song that's a kind of a product of the Primal Scream therapy, and I just love the lyrics of this song. I took my loved one out to dinner so we could get a bite to eat. Although we had both been so much thinner, she looked so beautiful, I could eat her. Of just fantastic stuff. It's poetry, man. And, again, like Mother before it, gets to the end of the song and he's screaming well, over and over again with such, velocity and passion, and yet he stays perfectly in tune. The penultimate song, Look at Me, again, is a beautiful ballad where he's being very, he's looking inwards at himself in a very sort of introverted way. Again, the vulnerability of him in this song is, it's just something else, really. The album kind of finishes with the song God, which has Billy Preston playing piano on it. And it kind of starts off like, a very sort of gentle piano ballad. But then he goes into this part where he's talking about all the things that he used to believe in, but he doesn't believe in. And it gets, it gets more and more intense as he goes through the list of about 15 different things. And he ends it with, I don't believe in Beatles. And then there's a bar of silence. And that bar of silence is so poignant before he comes back in with I Just Believe in Me, Yoko and Me. Absolutely fantastic song. The final track, which is just under a minute, My Mum Is Dead, obviously about that, but made that more kind of intense because, you know, it sounds like he's singing it through a telephone, and it's to the tune of the kids' nursery rhyme, Three Blind Mice. Just, you know, a very, very abrupt way to end an absolutely fantastic album. You know, I'm not really sure what other superlatives I can say about this album. It is just the greatest John Lennon album of all time, as far as I'm concerned, and possibly the greatest Beatles solo album. And, you know, the lineup is so minimalistic. It's just John on piano and guitar, Ringo on drums, Klaus Voormann on bass. And the fact that it's so basic, there is so little production on this album, just gives it that stark feel that just makes you pay attention. One thing that I have noticed about this album is that even though each of the songs are fantastic in their own right, if you kind of play your albums on shuffle mode, they don't have the same, the songs from this album don't have the same impact when they're not played one after the other in the order that they are supposed to be on this album. They don't play very well out of context, and I think that is a similar thing on Sgt. Pepper as it goes, which is interesting. Okay, so my favourite track on the album, I think, is God. It's a toss-up between God and Isolation. I guess that my least favourite is My Mum Is Dead, but my number one album is John Lennon, Plastic Ono Band. If you've made it to the end of this video, give yourself a great big slap on the back. Congratulations. It's gone on much longer than I originally intended, but there just seemed to be so much to say about these fantastic albums that I didn't want to just skimp over it and do a 5-minute ranking video. Now, you know, that's my ranking. I'd love to hear your rankings. I would love to hear what you think of my rankings. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? But if you want to tell me your own personal rankings, I'd love to read them down in the comments. As you know, I read everything and respond to everything. Now, if you want to do me a great big favour, please give the video a thumbs up, or leave a comment, or do both of those things, because those two things really help with the YouTube algorithm, help my videos get out there to more people and help me grow the channel. So you'd be doing a big favour if you do one or two of those things. If you're seeing this channel for the first time and you like what you see, please consider supporting the channel by subscribing. We'd love to have you on board. That would be absolutely fantastic. Okay, well, that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.